Hello everyone, this is Ron from High Tech Legion, and this is part of our review of the MSI GeForce GTX 660 video card. And this is the Twin Frozr OC version of the GTX 660 from MSI. And in this part we are going to take a look at how to overclock this GTX 660 card. Now, slightly different, of course, from the previous generation 500 series and 400 series video cards. You don't directly adjust the core clock and the memory clock like before. You actually have to adjust offsets. As you can see here in the sliders, you have the core clock, you have +0 +0 right now by default. And since if you're not familiar with how to overclock with the Kepler, I'm going to do this as simple as possible. The GeForce GTX 660 Twin Frozr OC from MSI does not have over voltage function. So even if you go in this software, if you click unlock voltage in here and it will say restart, and the program will restart again, you can see that there's still no option to adjust the core voltage. So all you need to do to overclock, or all you can do to overclock the GTX 660 in this case, is of course through the power limiter, core clock, and memory clock adjustments. Now, if you've seen my previous review of the MSI GeForce GTX 660 Ti, which actually has a triple overvoltage feature, I had to adjust the temperature since TDP, the overclock for the Kepler series video cards are essentially TDP controlled. As you can see there, the memory clock in here, it will adjust, the maximum will adjust depending on the type of load and the temperature available. Also, if there's enough power, there's enough headroom thermally and for the power draw to be able to push the core clock beyond what is specified. It's similar to Intel. You have turbo boost essentially, and this one we just start overclocking. I would suggest using something like Unigine or Unigine Heaven 3.0. It's a free benchmark, basic edition, and you also get a 3D Mark 11. I use Unigine in the back. And first thing, of course, step is to adjust the power limiter to 110%, and that pretty much gives you allowance to adjust the core clock and memory clock. All it tells the Afterburner software tells your video card to draw as much power as it can when it needs to, beyond 100%. So 110%, that is the maximum in this GTX 660. Then what you should do is find the core clock and the memory clock separately. So do the core clock first. I would suggest doing it in increments of 10. So do +10 and then run Unigine Heaven. So type Heaven benchmark. You can actually leave it in the background. For some reason, what I've found is that even if you set it in the maximum setting, so 4x, don't make it full screen, just have it in the back. And then I had the tessellation. I just left it at normal, and the anti-aliasing, I didn't max it out. I actually left it at 4x with the tessellation normal instead of extreme. It actually was able to pick out the errors faster than leaving it in the maximum, in extreme setting, and maximum anti-aliasing. I'm not sure why why more tessellation doesn't detect as good as normal tessellation, but from my experience with this card, that's pretty much what happened so far. You can leave it in the back and just see it will run there. Make sure to press F9. You're benchmarking that. Of course, it will load depending on your system. Take a while to load. Just hit F9. So it will benchmark there in the back. And then you can Alt-Tab. Make sure don't select the full screen option with the Heaven benchmark, so it can run in the back while you're adjusting it here. In front, you can see the power limit there, 96. It's not approaching 110% yet, but it can reach that if the program demands it. And you see the temperature is also climbing in here. And the maximum boost now is 1110. Got it to +10 here. Of course, it's not crashing. What actually I do is a little bit more. I like to take my time when overclocking because I want to find out the as much as accurately as I can. What I do is, of course, plus 10. Keep on increasing to plus 10. What I actually usually do is I let Unigine finish. Of course, plus 10, that's understandable. But once you reach something like plus 50, what I would suggest finishing the benchmark completely. I actually reached the maximum was plus 63. That was the most accurate I've had. 64 would crash sometimes. Not that it would crash, but the memory clock, the core clock would throttle down. And also, I suggest keeping the same settings with Unigine so that you can compare. Since at the end it will show a score in frames per second and in 3 or 4 digit numbers. So it is important to check that, keep the settings similar to use here. Whatever settings you choose, as long as you keep it similar from each test to each test, so that you can compare whether adjusting a core clock or adjusting more memory clock will make a difference in your overclock. Again, you're not adjusting the core clock directly, you're basically adjusting the boost. So that is the difference between Kepler and previous generation GeForce video cards. Also, for memory clock, as I said, core clock, do it in 10 steps. For the memory clock, of course, reset. Don't leave your core clock to 0 and then find the memory clock separately. Usually the memory clock is a lot higher, so I would do it suggested in steps of 100s. And of course, don't maximize it all the way to the top. Actually, don't worry about crashing. Once it crashes, it actually automatically recovers. But of course, if you set it all the way to the max, you'll see your screen turn weird colors like pink and or sometimes green, orange, and of course it will recover. But you know, you don't want to damage your card. So step by step, 100, run Unigine. Once you reach plus 300, finish your Unigine benchmarks till you get a score. Keep on adding plus 100 until you reach a high number. I think the maximum I got was plus 400 with a memory clock. Unlike if you've seen my review of the 660 Ti, since the bandwidth of that is limited to 192 bit bus width, it actually gained a lot of performance even if I left the core clock to 0 and the memory clock to a higher number. In this case, it's not so much. With a GTX 660, you have to adjust. I would suggest that you actually adjusting your memory clock higher and just leaving your core clock at 0 will not generate as much performance boost as it did in a 660 Ti. So of course, you're gonna once you find the maximum of that, find whatever setting you find, whatever core clock is the maximum as well. So I found 63, and then test the value with both maximums and see if Unigine finishes. And then if it passes, run 3D Mark 11 if you have the program. Make sure it finishes. If it doesn't finish, it crashes. I would suggest downclocking the memory clock and keeping the core clock at its maximum. Downclock it. You want to do 50 steps first, and then if first 50 steps it works, fine-tune it to plus 20 steps until you fine-tune it to plus 5 or plus 10 steps. Alright, so it takes just a trial and error trial and error process, and of course it's very satisfying as the performance is significant once you overclock. Well, not as significant as the triple overvoltage GTX 660 Ti, which actually you can add more core voltage so you can overclock it further. But in this case already, it comes, the GTX 660 Twin Frozr already comes with the 1033, I believe, core clock. That's pre-boosted. That's the boost clock of the reference design. So plus the plus 63 in core clock, that should net you a decent frame rate boost already on top of what it came with. Now, as for cooling, as I mentioned earlier, that unlike the GTX 660 Ti, where you set the cooling fan profile, the custom fan profile cooling. In here, you don't actually need to. Leaving it an auto, the maximum, even with this overclock setting, the maximum temperature I got was 60 degrees Celsius. The maximum you are allowed with the GK104 core, or GK106 core, which is the chip used here, GTX 660, is 90 degrees. That is the maximum for that. So 60 degrees with the Twin Frozr III cooling, that is very, very good. That is, of course, overclocked and left it at auto. And if you're wondering if the noise is bad, this is actually, right now, it is running. Let's check the fan speed here. Fan speed is 30, maximum is 39. But actually, the maximum with this overclock I've tested was around not even 50. It was 44, I believe, or 40 something. And it's not audible until you reach 50. That's how quiet this fan is. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm actually going to do this auto. I'm going to make this at what, 40 as first. I'm going steps 5 steps until I reach something like 100. Actually, I think I need to, because it doesn't really reach that high. As you can see, as you can hear, even leaving it auto and 40 doesn't really have a noticeable change at all. It wasn't until 50 will be the first noticeable step. You can see here that the fan RPM jumped to 2,000 from 1,300 from the 40%. And even this one is still acceptable. It's still quieter than the reference. And I'm saying that it didn't even reach 50% when you lifted it auto overclocked. So that is very good. I don't even need to adjust it further than that, because nobody in their right mind would set it to 60 when the temperature is already well beyond 60, well under the 90 degree maximum, and also significantly better than the reference GTX 660 cooling, which was just a single blower fan, where GTX 660 Twin Frozr uses a pair of 80mm fans, and of course it's a significantly larger heat pipe cooling system. And that pretty much covers the overclocking part of this GeForce GTX 660 Twin Frozr OC video card from MSI. And you can read the rest of the review at hightechlegion.com. You can leave questions and comments below. You can read the rest of the review at hightechlegion.com. Leave questions and comments in our forums. Leave questions or comments down below, or on our Facebook, facebook.com/HTLreviews. And that pretty much covers this part of the review. Again, thanks for watching, and see you next time.